Hello everyone, it's Maha here. I'm going to be reviewing the Silver Witchcraft Tarot deck for you today by The Ancient Wisdom of Tarot by Barbara Moore and Franco Rivolli. This was a viewer's request and I featured this deck in my Fate Free Will thread that I did a little while ago. And I've been working with this deck almost every day and really getting to know it better and growing with it. So I thought this was a good time to be doing this in-depth review for you. So this is a Lo Scarabeo deck. Comes with this beautiful hard box. And I usually don't keep my boxes, you guys, but I really love this deck. It has this magnetic tap on the side and opens up like this. I really love this box, so I kept it. It's nice, really nice box. There we go, for those of you who like boxes. And the book that it comes with is a very thought-provoking book. I really like it. I want to go over it with you in depth and read you some sections of it to get you more familiar with the book, because I feel that this deck really comes to life with the help of this guidebook. There are some things about this deck that are quite maybe a little odd to begin with, and we will get into that when I show you the cards. And reading the book is really important because it really makes you understand where these images come from and why they are the way they are. So the cards are really nice cardstock, glossy, shuffles really well. I found it to be beautifully spreadable. And I love the backing. They have silver gilded edges, which is really nice. They are beautiful cards, really beautiful. And what I love about this deck is the intensity of the colors. I mean, they're just so rich with color. So if you're someone like me who really appreciates juiciness and deliciousness of color, then you're going to be in for a feast for your eyes, because yeah, these are just really attractive colors, attractive cards. And one thing I just wanted to say, which I'll get into a lot more in depth when I show you the cards, is that some people found this deck to be a bit awkward. The images of the major arcana are all on these pedestals, as you can see, as you probably maybe are already familiar with, and some people found that really strange. But once we get into that, I'll explain what it says in the book, and you'll have more of an understanding about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the cards before we look at the book. So we're going to begin by looking at the major arcana cards in this deck, beginning with the Magician. And in this card, the Magician is a female. It's a girl sitting on this cube that's kind of old and earthy, with these branches intertwined all around. So Barbara Moore, in the book, she explains that the spheres relate to a particular aspect of our experience or the energies surrounding us. And she divides the major arcana cards into 3 groupings. So cards 1 to 7 relate to the material sphere. And so this is card number 1. She's sitting on this earthy cube. So from 1 to 7, all the cards are going to have the same cube that they're going to be shown with. And then cards 8 to 14 relate to the intellectual sphere. Cards 15 to 21 relate to the spiritual divine sphere. And I'll point those ones out when we get to them. So in the book, she goes into much more detail about how you can get more insights and deeper meanings into each card by relating them to the sphere that they're related to. And she talks about why she's decided to put them in those groupings. And so you can see there is the moon. She's pointing above to the moon and holding an open book. I really like this magician card. I like the fact that there is a book here. To me, that connects me to the astrological association of this card, which is to Mercury, and Mercury stands for knowledge and for the intellect. So it seems to me that she's bringing that higher knowledge down to the physical, material earth down below. She's connecting the two. And then the 4 elements are shown by the bracelet she's wearing. The symbols are on her bracelet, which I don't know if you can see in my camera. And I thought that was a nice touch. Then we have High Priestess. And I really like this depiction of High Priestess as well. She's sitting in between these 2 trees, which have got their branches kind of intertwined. Her foot is just touching the pool of water with the reflection of the moon underneath. And she's holding the book closed. She's holding the wisdom. She's holding the inner knowledge and intuition. And she's sitting in between these 2 pillars, which she's kind of holding the in-between space between the spiritual and the physical here in this picture. And I'll come back to her in a moment. The Empress card, again, notice the same cubes. The bunny rabbits representing fertility. She's almost like the queen of this deck, whereas the king is the emperor. So the Empress and the Emperor here. The male and female aspects. And they're connected with this ribbon here, with this pink ribbon, which I think, if I remember correctly, was supposed to represent love that unites them. And he's got the ram here. Then we got these 2 pairs, the High Priestess and the High Priest. Very similar connections here. He's got the book open, whereas she's got it closed. So to me, it's like she's the holder of wisdom, and he's the teacher of wisdom. She's wearing, he's wearing the sun, and she's wearing the moon, the triple moon on her head and in the necklace. I think there is there is actually quite a strong link between all the cards in this deck, which I really like. And the idea of this deck, and we'll get more into that later, especially in the Minor Arcana, is it's based on the cycles of nature, cycles of the seasons. We got the Lovers here, and she's wearing the moon pendant, he's wearing the sun pendant. So she's representing the feminine, the subconscious, and he's the male, conscious. They're united, and then there's this light in the middle. That light in the middle is actually there in most of the cards in the Major Arcana. There it is again. This is the Chariot. And I really like how they've used the color of the skin tone, as well as the robes, to depict that polarity, that black and white that we see in the Chariot card. And they're stretched out holding a baby and holding it towards the light, and there's stars in the background, the stars that we see in the Chariot card of the RWS system. And so the idea behind this card, she explains, is that a baby is born because of their union. So they're representing 2 separate energies. And I really like that. Again, astrologically, I always think about the astrological connections of the cards, because you guys know I study astrology quite a lot. And this is a card related to Cancer. This has always been the most confusing card for me from the Rider-Waite Smith depiction of it, the Pamela Cole Smith depiction of that card. However, I mean, I do understand it now after studying it quite intensely. And in this one, I see the baby as being related to Cancer, to that mothering aspect, which can be from either one of the parents, not necessarily the mother or the father. And in astrology, in modern astrology, Cancer can be related to both the experience of parenting. And then we have the Strength card. So here you see the sphere has changed. The cube has changed. It's become sharp and really clean. The edges are sharp. And so that's the intellectual sphere of life. Again, that light in the middle. And that's the green man holding the, or putting his hand on the lion. The Hermit. The Wheel. The Cycle of Life, Maiden Mother Crone. Justice. I really like this card as well. She talks about justice not as in the personal human justice, but as in the law of nature, as the law of karma. And she's the goddess Fortuna. She's the blind goddess who is judging without seeing. That's how the law of nature works. And she's pregnant, which connects her again to nature. She's blowing on some leaves that are turning into butterflies. She's transforming and balancing those aspects in nature which need to be transformed and balanced. And again, two opposites. The Hangman. It's really funny because I've been doing daily draws with the Animal Totem deck by Lisa Robertson. And the other day I drew, actually yesterday, I drew the Hangman in that deck. And then I was reading in her book, and she uses the inverted posture of yoga as an example for explaining how the heart chakra is above the head. And she talks about how we can surrender to our thoughts or release and let go of our mind. And how she talks about how this yoga pose is a very good example of that. And then I came across this card. Barbara Moore doesn't explain really why she's chosen this posture, or they've chosen this posture, the specific posture. Although I still do like what she says in the book. The Death card. This is one that not very many people liked in this deck. I personally really like this Death card, and actually that's one of the reasons why I got this deck to begin with. I was so in love with the Death card. To me, it's really different. It's really creative. It's a creative way of depicting this image. How there is that sun coming up over the mountains. I really like, I don't know, I really like the fact that there's no figure, and there's this velvety red cape down here. It's almost like, and there's some light just hovering above it. It's almost like the figure could still be there, even though it's not physically there. And I know sometimes, well, the butterfly is sort of a stereotypical symbol for transformation, and they used it there. I don't mind it though. I really like this card. And actually, just gonna quickly go back to this card again. When I was telling you that I did my daily draw with the Hangman, I was thinking that I really love how sometimes different oracle decks overlap. Not intentionally, but it just happens that way. And it's really interesting to hear other people's points of view of the same card, sometimes overlapping. That's really cool, I think. So I really like the Death card. And there's the Temperance card. That's my card, related to Sagittarius. It's alright. I have to say I personally think the figure is a little stiff. I mean, this deck is a bit odd. The images are a bit odd, and the artwork is different, and I think that's what I like about it though. The Devil. And this is interesting. There's a reflection of this black, shadowy, burnt looking tree. And then there's these chains down here. It makes me think that I'm that image, you know, you're looking at yourself and tree being the metaphor for the body. And right now we just went to the sphere of the divine sphere. So we got this cube made out of energy, of light. Spiritual divine sphere. The tower, the blasted tower. There's a lightning, 2 birds. By the way, there's after this divine spiritual sphere begins, there is more abstraction in the cards. The star. I like this card as well. I like the star card because there's 2 figures and then the star in the middle, but the figures are kind of hazy. They're really dreamy. They're almost like angels in the clouds. The moon and the sun. So again, we've got the high priestess and the high priest back in action. And he is behind the sun. So they're representing the true essence of the feminine and masculine in this deck. The Judgment. I have to say I don't really like this card. This is probably my only not so favorite card. I don't really resonate with this card at all. I find these sharp kind of tattoo-ish images are kind of, I don't know, they just remind me of stereotypical sticker tattoos. But I guess they're supposed to be figures sort of flying out, and then there's a bird, some kind of bird. Yeah, I don't know. That's just my least favorite card. I like all the other cards though. This is the World, and I like how there is the older age and then the child. So it's almost like the different phases of life all together in one, with this old, very ancient tree with its roots down here. And then the Fool card doesn't have any cubes in it. It's just this landscape, this perfect perspective that's looking out, looking at a path ahead, sun and the moon. And then there's this little figure beside the tree, which kind of is reminiscent of this tree and these 2 figures, except this one looks like it's just a child. It's just a shadow. You can't really tell what it is. And so that's like a road that keeps going. And then there's this whole open possibilities. Everything is possible in this open space, open field. Now we're going to have a quick look at the court cards, beginning with the Page of Swords. So all of the figures in the suit of swords are going to be seen wearing these yellow robes. I really like the suit of swords in the court cards. So she's kind of floating in the clouds, and then there's a book hovering just above her hand, and she's holding her athame in one hand. There's obviously wind blowing. You can see her hair is blowing in the wind. And there's the Knight of Swords. I love this Knight of Swords. I love the colors and how there's so much movement in the clouds. And he's just sitting, holding a book, flying on this bird, or riding on this bird. Queen of Swords. King of Swords. He's sitting on this throne that's very similar to the cubes of the intellectual sphere. He's got a very serious look. I love the suit of pentacles, by the way, all of them, in the minor arcana especially. There's the Page of Pentacles, field of flowers. They're wearing green, all of the figures in the pentacle suit, and she's just about to taste a grape, taking pleasure in the senses. Knight of Pentacles. in the forest, on a deer, sounding a horn. Queen of Pentacles, with her bunny rabbit, sitting on a throne that's made out of this really thick tree, which I like, and I wish that the king was sitting on the same or a similar one, because what the king is sitting on is very similar to the sharp edges of the look of the throne of the element of air, the swords. But it's made out of wood if you look closely, except I don't know, it doesn't look natural to me, which is all about what pentacles are all about, in my opinion. Page of Wands. These are all going to be in the desert wearing red capes, and camel is very appropriate that the Knight of Wands is riding on, with salamanders are to be seen here and there. I think there were fairies in the pentacles and dwarfs, and then there were little fairies as well in the swords. This Queen of Wands I really like. I love her, this really intense look she has on her face. I don't know, you can't really see it, it's blurry. She's so intense. And that fire is like her inner fire that she's really confidently holding. And King of Wands. I like the palm tree. I don't know about the crystals. Page of Chalices. The Knight of Chalices, riding a dolphin. You got the triple moon, and all of the chalices are the cups, so the element of water. Shells for her throne. I don't love all the facial expressions in the personality cards, and actually I've talked about this before. When I look at court cards, I really take note of their facial features and their expressions, because to me it's all about personality, so that's really important to me. And one of my favorite decks for court card personalities is the Witchcraft tarot. King of Chalices. And now let's look at the minor arcana. So I'm going to start here with the suit of chalices. And this is my favorite Ace of Cups or Ace of Chalices ever, I think. Ever, of all time. I just love, love, love the feeling of this card. I really like the aces of this deck. All the cards are in order, so I'm just going to go through them, and as you look, I'll just talk about it. So right here is the moon and the reflection. You will see the moon in the suit of chalices all throughout. And here's the two chalices. As you can see, it's sort of a winterish landscape. This changes because the cards are about cycles. All the cards are about cycles, especially the minor arcana. And we will look at that in the book briefly, because she explains why and how that is, and how they are intimately linked to the meanings and the symbolism of each card, how each cycle is linked to each meaning and symbolism. Three of Chalices. I like the use of color, how it changes so much. So from here to there, see the difference. Really beautiful colors, and like I said, my camera is not doing any justice for this, so just keep that in mind. This is gorgeous. You've got a lot of animals around her, resting beneath a tree trunk. I love this card, Five of Chalices. This is another one of my favorite cards ever. Absolutely favorite. She's blown out 3 candles, and there's 2 behind her. I've been working really intuitively with this deck, so I haven't read everything in the book. And with this, I've just gone intuitively, and I love her expression, her way of so gracefully dealing with what's there and with what's not there. So the 2 candles are behind her, but she's just so graceful about it. She's not standing there crying, she's just flowing through that. love the sense of atmosphere in that card. 6 of Chalices. Beautiful colors. 7 of Chalices. And actually, this one really, I was confused at first. I took it for 7 of Pentacles because you have the kind of green everywhere, and she's picking an apple from a tree. I've seen similar images where someone's picking a fruit or waiting for some fruit, you know, that traditionally it's waiting for the harvest. So that kind of confused me at first. 8 of Chalices. Beautiful colors here. Look at the color scheme. Look at that fire, how it's just glowing, and then you have the blue, purple, orangey sky. That kind of really meditative feeling, but which comes with nature. And then I love the sense of solitude in this card. And the sky, if you could see it, which you can't with my camera, has little stardust all around in the sky. So gorgeous. 10 of Chalices. Now we're going to get to my favorite suit in this deck, which is Suit of Pentacles. I love this Ace of Pentacles. It's so gorgeous. There's these spider web looking things. She calls them silver threads that she explains connect the physical to the spiritual. So she goes through and describes how in the material world there is no lack of the spiritual in the physical world, or in the element of earth, there is no lack of the spiritual. And I will read you that part when we get to the book because I think it's really nicely written. And here you see the triple moon connecting to the pentacles, and you will notice that the number of pentacles and, well, the number of the elements are not necessarily drawn in the image. So here you have 2, but you don't necessarily have them in every card, which is fine, in my opinion. I think it's actually kind of nice because I don't really like when the artist feels like they have to force themselves to fit in the 4 or the 5 or the number in, because it kind of takes away sometimes from the image. It's more abstract this way, and of course we can figure it out when we see the writing on the bottom, unless you want to trim the borders, which in this case you don't have to. And I love how in here there's a tree trunk and they're building a sculpture out of that. So something is taking form or taking shape, and it's obviously a creative act, which is nice because the 3 of Pentacles is related to creativity. Number 3, creativity from something from the physical. 4 of Pentacles. So again, you don't see 4, you just see 1 pentacle right in the middle. And I will just say here that you will notice that there is an absence of the darker images. Normally, I would not go for a deck like that. I don't go for decks that avoid the dark because I believe the dark and light are both a necessary element of tarot. However, in this case, I've made an exception because I've learned to understand that the images are not quote-unquote positive, but rather they are more the lessons, the deeper lessons in each card. Sorry guys, I got interrupted by the phone there. So this is 5 of Pentacles. Very interesting. Very different from the standard, typical, traditional paintings or renderings of this. Images, I should say. There's a bunny rabbit in the middle, so the bunny is kind of a reoccurring theme in the Suit of Pentacles. It represents the earth and fertility, abundance of the earth, and they're wearing green. And like I was saying, yes, the lessons are it's the deeper lessons in each card. So it's not necessarily positive or negative. And we will see that. You'll get a better understanding of that when I show you the suit of swords. So I like how here the giving and receiving is exchange between nature. So the animals and the tree. And the season is the season of spring, which she'll talk about why that is. Seven of Pentacles, beautiful image. Very still, very calm, gives me the feeling of patience. Nothing is moving, everything is still. It's just grass, like hay growing. Everything is very clear. She's just solitary standing there. Very serene. That's the feeling I get with this card. Eight of Pentacles is, those are the lanterns that she's building. She's building light. And I love the atmosphere, the sense of atmosphere here at the bottom, and where you see the water and the sky, the bird. It's just beautiful. This is a beautiful image. Peace and solitude. Again, that makes me think of that. And the last card in the Suit of Pentacles. So then we go on to the Suit of Swords. I like the balance of the light and dark here in this image. Two of Swords, again, a beautiful image. I keep saying that, but I really love the way there's a sense of a feeling is achieved here with the way the atmospheric kind of sense that you get in each card. And I love how these two are kind of related as far as the colors go. You get that a lot with this deck. You get the cards that relate, the images relate to each other. And this is a Three of Swords, which is one of my favorite cards, not only in this deck, but in all time, because I have a special memory with this card. I actually was having a really bad day one day. I was having a lot of physical pain, and obviously was affecting me mentally and emotionally, and I drew this card. And when I read what she wrote in the book, it really soothed my heart. It was amazing. I still think about it, and it really taught me that pain is a cycle of life, just like everything else. Everything is a cycle. I think that's the greatest lesson I've gotten from working with this deck. And when we look at the book, I'll show you that she writes a keyword or a short phrase for every card. And for this card, it was pain comes and pain goes. I have that like embedded in my brain. Every time I feel something difficult that comes up for me, I always just repeat that over and over like a mantra. Pain comes, pain goes. It's been very healing for me. Just it's very soothing. So it's a soothing reminder. Four of Swords. Again, there's only one sword, as you can see here. So it's not necessarily, the number. Five of Swords is another really great card. I love this card. Very different take on the Five of Swords, which you get traditionally. And I like that. I love when creators, both the artist and the author, work to create an image that's slightly different from the RWS traditional traditional imagery that we see. So in this case, I learned a lot with this card also. She talks about boundaries, how it's important to establish boundaries when you're getting into a discussion or an argument even. And, the Five of Swords is usually linked to the mind, but when things are not going right, as opposed to things going really smoothly with communication, with thinking, with the mind, with your with actually having a physical space, because the element of air is linked to space, and in this case, to me, this image really tells me that they're separating, they're drawing the line so that they know where the boundaries are, and they're establishing a sense of peace, a sense of getting along, instead of one person taking over and taking off with all the swords, winning the battle. Like, it's not a battle, it's about working together or coming into some kind of balance. Six of Swords. I like that waterfall, the way it's just like gives you the idea of moving along, not just the ship moving, the boat moving along, but the water actually moving along. Seven of Swords, again, kind of different. There's that sense of movement in the air. There's a lot of wind, and you don't know if she's hiding, if she feels guilty, if she's done something wrong, if she feels bad. Yeah, there's a lot of questions that come up for me with this card. I like that. I like when that happens. Eight of Swords. She's tied herself to the tree and she's cutting herself off with the sword, or she's not really cutting herself off, she's about to. You think that she can. She's holding the sword. She can free herself from the bondage. But for some reason, she's not doing it. And again, it links to the previous card because you see the same girl behind a tree, you know. It's like a progression. And the Nine of Swords, I really like that. Can you see how she's standing and looking at a tree, and then the tree's reflection is kind of imprinted on the bed. And the Ten of Swords, there's butterflies, transformation is happening, and I like how the swords are going into the earth. So here it's like the body is the earth, or the earth is the body, and some transformation is taking place, and things are happening in the air. Butterflies are flying in the air. So the Ace of Wands, and in the Suit of Wands, you see the cat and you see fire. So the red cat is linked to the element of fire. And then the season of harvest, which she'll explain in the book. Two of Wands, the red cat here on the bottom, he's just standing before a beautiful landscape. Beautiful colors. I love how that little cat is stretching now. I like that he's not holding two wands, you know, or three wands. You always see them holding the stick, holding the sword. It's like, you know, we already know that this is the Three of Wands, that you actually have to paint it in there. Sometimes it takes away from the image. I've been thinking about that recently. That never used to bother me, actually, until now that I'm working with more and more decks and seeing other ways of putting it. Four of Wands, celebration, and there's a red cat. And now you see the cycle again, because this couple is really young right now. And then they grow as we go from here until the Ten of Swords, Ten of Wands. So the Five of Wands, instead of competition, they're working together, they're holding hands in a circle, working together. I guess if you really want to read it the other way around, you could use the reversals. If you use reversals that way, that is. Six of Wands, again, that same couple. Very different from the traditional imagery of RWS, where you have a man sitting on a horse, having this idea of victory showing, and people are surrounded by him. Here you have a couple, and they're bond together. They look like, in their facial expressions, something important has taken place in their life, something they're proud of. Whatever you can think with your imagination what that could be. Seven of Wands. This is also very interesting because usually you have a man protecting himself from a bunch of wands that are coming from down below from a cliff or something. Here you've got a feeling of being on defense, but protecting the family or protecting the land. These obviously look like some workers on a land, and they look like a family with a dog and the kids, and they're protecting what they own, protecting what they have. Eight of Wands. I love this one because there's such a sense of movement here. Just the way it's painted, his hair running, he's running and his hair is just floating that way in the wind. And then the cat is just sitting there, not running. Cat is like, what are you doing running? I love that. Nine of Wands. Okay, so yeah, this one you see, it's an older man. So an elder sitting telling a story around the fire of his experiences, of all the steps he had to go through from Ace to Nine of Wands getting here. So when you see Nine of Wands traditionally, you have the man who is kind of weary, tired, exhausted, maybe wounded after all the different things that he had gone through. And in this case, you have a man kind of wise man sitting by the fire telling his story, and Nine of Wands as well as the 8 and the 10 of Wands are linked to Sagittarius. So I can't remember which planet is in Sagittarius in the Nine of Wands. Oh yeah, it is the moon. The moon is very protective, very wise. Moon in Sagittarius can be very wise, lots of wisdom that comes from way back, maybe before this lifetime. So I really like that representation. 10 of Wands is the last card. Season of winter, and then there's that fire burning within the snow. And you can't tell if she's burdened, if she's tired, or if she has hope and going forward. Okay, so now let's go look at the book, shall we? Alright, so the Silver Witchcraft Tarot Guidebook by Barbara Moore. Beautiful image, that Ace of Cups. I love that. It's a beautiful book. All the images are in full color. Beautiful, beautiful book. The intro page. Table of contents. Introduction. Welcome to the Silver Witchcraft Tarot. Nice long intro. And then you have the Tarot Basics, it's chapter 1. There's this she talks about the structure of the deck, how the deck is organized, different symbolism and what they stand for. For example, here she talks about silver moons, silver threads, silver wings, silver flames, and basically this is the minor arcana and the different areas of life. And then you have the significance of numbers and how the numbers are linked to the cycles of life, the cycles of the seasons. Number 1 is the self, 2 is Yule, 3 is Imbolc, 4 is Ostara. And she gives a little description so you can connect to them through the cards. 5 is Beltane, 6 is Litha, and on to number 10. And then throughout the book, in italics, in green italics, you have she's given you reflections, things to reflect on in order to understand the concepts that she describes before. And I think that's a really great part of this deck, that reflection aspect of it. So she talks about understanding the cycles and how you can understand the cycles of the seasons through this deck. And then you've got sections on intuition, reversals, divination. Chapter 2, how to do a reading. And this is really great. A lot of reflections and a lot of things to consider, things to look for in certain dimensions of the deck. So things to look for in reversals, for example, major arcana, court cards. And then she gives you pointers like check the numbers, look at the visual patterns made by the cards, interpret each individual cards, and then she gives you things to reflect on. So check the numbers. If there are multiples of 2, there is a focus on choices or relationships. This is a really great guidebook for a beginner, someone who's beginning just to study with tarot. And of course, as an intermediate or advanced, you can always deepen your knowledge when you read about what other people have to say, of course. Further tips for clear readings. That's good too. For example, you have end strong, eliminate spinning a reading. Tips that she gives you. Other uses for tarot, magical work, journaling, meditation, and then chapter 4 is major arcana. And so here is a nice, full, detailed description of why the major arcana are divided into 3 spheres of existence. So what I was talking about with the cubes. So card 1 to 7 relate to the material sphere, card 8 to 14. So this is this. She talks about, she divides them up to different groupings, and then she reflects on that first before going into more detail about the areas of being and how these two connect. And then over here, she gives you a long paragraph for each of the sets that she talks about. So I don't know if you can see the color differences here. I think this book, because of its different coloring, it makes it easier to refer to. However, I just have to make one comment. For some reason, I don't know if this deck was, I don't know if it was, this book was edited or not as a final editing, but there are so many little mistakes like spelling errors and grammar, sentence structure. It made it for me a little bit frustrating to read. I don't know if any of you have any experiences with this book. Let me know if you found the same, because I mean, it's a bit of a shame really, because there's so much insight in this book, and sometimes it's just frustrating to read just because of the way the sentences are written. Anyway, so then you have all of my major arcana, and they are all you have one full page with an image, and then one full page of description. So on the right hand side, colored photo, colored reproduction of the card. Keywords. Keywords are great in this deck because the keywords are given both for reversed and upright, which is really nice. And I found the keywords are really accurate and very in alignment with the astrological representations of the card as well. And then over here on the left, on the top, I don't know if you can see with my camera. On the top here you have the sphere of being. So here it's intellectual, and then another aspect of the card here is the goddess, the astrological sign, the element, and then you get a description of the image, and then a couple of paragraphs about the card, and then just another last reflection. So I'm just going to read you this card here. The justice of nature is not human justice. The black and white of her world are not judged as right and wrong. They are the opposing energies of the world. She seeks not to change them or condemn them. Instead, the justice of nature transforms dead leaves into butterflies, death into life, dark into light. Nature moves towards balance. When things become out of balance, she transforms them, bringing them back into balance, helping the wheel of life continue to turn. This card indicates, just skipping this paragraph, this card indicates that whatever is going on, it is a consequence of past actions, not merely chance, as we saw it in the wheel. So, as you can just see here as a small example, she connects every card to the card previous to it, which is nice. And then the reflection, justice without mercy is like a body without a soul. Justice is a caring energy and not a harsh, unforgivable mistress. The universe provides everything with growth, and true justice does not punish or compensate for loss, but she turns the energies around so that everything turns to be good in the universe. But as we humans cannot see over the big picture, sometimes we need to have faith in justice in order to be able to see it. So there's this interpretation is very similar in a lot of ways to the Wheel of Fortune, as you can probably get a sense of. And then I want to read, just to look at the major arcana quickly. So, okay. Just talks about the cycles in everyday life. The seasonal associations can be used to determine timing when seeking predictions. However, one second. However, it is important to remember to not only interpret these connections literally. Almost everything in tarot can be read as metaphors, so that the seasons may not necessarily relate to literal seasons, but metaphorically as represented by a new job or a new relationship. And it goes into that. It goes into cycles. Cycles experienced in everyday life, things to reflect on. And so the idea of cycles is really what runs through the theme of the major arcana in this deck. And I really, like I told you before, I love the pentacles. The suit of pentacles in this deck is my favorite. So I wanted to read you just a little bit here. So pentacles express the link and connections between things. Nothing can really be whole unless it is given manifestation, a body. This is why in the Silver Witchcraft Tarot, matter is symbolized by silver threads. Matter connects. Matter makes whole. Matter is just another form of energy. In Pentacles, I'm just skipping through many things. I'm reading lines here and there. In Pentacles, it is important to think about threads, connections, grounding, roots, manifestations. Everything is one, and the relation between one and everything, and between everything and one. You cannot separate the universe. So that's the Pentacles, which I had to read to you because I loved it. And so you get, with every card in the minor arcana, you get a few keywords on top. The suit meaning, its energies, and the number meaning, traditional meaning, description, and then a paragraph, quite a long paragraph about what is happening in there in the image. And then again, something to reflect on in the green italics. And then keywords both for upright and reversed. And then after the major arcana, you've got the court cards. Same with the court cards, you get a keyword on top. And then, well, just before the images, she talks about the different areas of being with the court cards. There's knowing, feeling, doing, and learning. So pages are feeling and learning, knights, learning and doing, queens, knowing and feeling, kings, knowing and doing. And so we have those realms, and then it talks about how you can connect those aspects to the king, queen, page, and knight. And then here you have a reflection about each one. You get a paragraph, a description, a keyword. And then we go into the spreads, chapter 7. The 1-card spread, 3-card spreads, the horseshoe spread, a new moon spread, alternate new moon spread, the Sabbath spread, and the wheel of the year spread. And then you have some variations to do with the cycles, spell work divination spread, and spell preparation spread. So that's pretty good, lots of spreads. And that's it. That's the book. Really great book. I hope you got an idea of this book and of the deck. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this deck, and as usual, I'll see you in my next videos, guys. Take care. Bye.